surging social activism in 2020, both a cause and a consequence of the Black Lives Matter movement, saw mass revision and toppling of public historical monuments. Many, if not all of these monuments, depicted historical figures involved in the slave trade, colonialism, the Confederacy, or general links to racial prejudice. Depending on who you ask, these monuments stand to either commemorate or to celebrate the past. In excavating the foundation of the moral, cultural, social convictions that gave rise to these statues themselves, might help us understand their purpose. Better yet, it might yield an answer to the curious question in the zeitgeist as to whether they should remain. What is the West's obsession with petrifying its notable characters in bronze and stone? What one imagines first as the prevailing rationale is a movement to place the importance of this particular individual in the course of history, as though this moment, this person, is where one's gaze should be directed. All preceding moments from this point are a causal consequence of this individual's actions. We owe our ideology, identity, and ideas to men forged of this anvil. This phenomenon is a product of an individualistic culture that venerates the contributions of great men, the tendency to erect, individualize, and realist monuments out of reverence for a storied perspective of a figure, or more aptly, the idea they represent. This is distinctive of Westernism, and while the act of erecting monuments and statues is not uniquely Western, the style and attitudes applied to the practice is a practice that could only emerge from the elevated sovereignty of the ego consciousness. The tradition popularized during the colonial period of the 1800s and early 1900s is rooted deeply in the past. In many ways, I treat this as a sort of hangover from feudal medieval Christendom, and even earlier, a baton passed on from Greek and Roman mythology and cultural worship of the warrior philosopher, or the divine embodiment of power, the ballads of Achilles, Hercules, humans with demigod attributes. Then to Hadrian, Augustus, Caesar, followed as Roman emperors. One must not forget King Arthur and his knights, the monasteries and its notable monks, all of which came in the shadow of a singularly great man, Christ, he who graced the race of mortal men with divinity and his spirit. Western society tends to adorn its heroes with superhuman glory and grandeur, the transcendent figures among us who not only paved the way for others to follow, but who reserved occasions in history for themselves alone. Their historically and politically inspired superior attributes, coupled with a nearly sacral, symbolic resonance, can capture the collective imagination. I treat this as a thread weaving through the Western tradition, the emphasis on individualism that tends to spotlight great men and monumentalize their contributions. In China, however, while it does possess idolatry, such practice is filtered through an egalitarian lens that does not elevate the contributions of the individual nearly in the same way. While there is a proclivity to worship certain personalities, such as Chairman Mao of the Chinese Communist Party, or the religious iconography of Confucian ideas, or even reverence for the current president, Xi Jinping. But in each of these instances, the sense of sameness pervades, as though each of these figures are leaving contributions to the idea of China and the Middle Kingdom, but they alone do not dictate its values nor its trajectory. Even in acknowledging the significant roles played by these figures, there is a conscious effort to embed them within the broader narrative of collective achievement and historical continuity. Despite the monumental influence of Chairman Mao, he is often portrayed as part of the broader revolutionary struggle. Mao is symptomatic, not a cause, of the centuries-long march of the proletariat. He himself, born merely a peasant and a contributor of the struggle for cultural supremacy. Neither approach is inherently right or wrong. The erection of statues is representative of the cultural milieu through which societies relate to history and themselves. The dichotomy between individualistic monuments in the West and a more communal approach taken in China illustrates this diversity in the expression of collective memory and how people memorialize and celebrate their past. To categorize historical figures as inherently good or evil based on contemporary moral standards oversimplifies the operations of historical contingency. The complexity of the dialectic, as Hegel anticipates, means that opposing forces produce a synthesized outcome, more conscious and more enlightened. Take the master and slave as an example. As the relationship unfolds, the slave, through labor and struggle, develops a level of self-consciousness and independence. The master becomes reliant on the labor of the slave for sustenance and comfort. The dialectic reaches a resolution when both the master and the slave achieve a mutual recognition of each other's humanity and individuality. If you buy into this idea, the dialectical process concludes with greater humanity and consciousness than before when the process first began. To reflect upon the master and slave from the beginning of their relationship disservices the process of the dialectic that took place. Such an exercise would be folly. The primary criticism levelled at the use of statues in the West is, however, a fair one. Many see through this facade of historical contingency that attempts to shield great men's statues. The argument is often deployed in the defense of statues that they are public-facing, extant pieces of history to remind us of who we are. They recognize the contingent circumstance of our past and who we are today. Some would argue the treatment of the statue is through the prism of the dialectic. This is a worthy consideration, but in the eyes of many, this defense does not capture the whole picture. Those who inherit the legacy of colonialism today, particularly on the side of the colonized, view the structures less as vestiges of historical clues or evidence used to reflect the period of their creation, but propagandistic relics of nostalgia and veneration for great men, not commemorative but celebrative. Viewed from this perspective, the ongoing defense of great men's statues does away with temporally bound circumstances. Statues are not neatly contained to an historical era. The themes they represent are not long-forgotten distant memories buried deep in the past. For as long as these great men are petrified, so too stands their ideas. The general society will as such continue to falsely worship these heroes. The question in my mind becomes how to best strike the balance between recognizing the past and giving people a right to their history for good or ill, while recognizing the pain and the suffering that certain symbols serve to those who continually grieve and feel loss. A notable and supremely contentious example is a memorial dedicated to the British explorer and the first European to formally colonize Australia, Captain James Cook. The memorial is located in Sydney's Hyde Park, a stone's throw northwest of the site where Cook's fleet landed in 1770. Activists have drawn ire at the memorial both for its immortalization of Cook in bronze and granite, but as well for an inscription on the back plaque, discovered this territory, 1770. Some want the bust removed altogether, others want it qualified with another plaque, recognizing his role in colonialism, while once more others feel several other statues should be erected in its vicinity, paying tribute to heroes of the Indigenous Australians. The latter suggestion, to put it in so many words, is difficult to reconcile, given how Indigenous people understand their own history. For now, the statue stands, though one can hardly consider the future of the bronze Captain Cook brought to its conclusion. To destroy the statue, of which the New South Wales government and its public subscribers had spent years building, is an unlikely outcome. Further, it would implicitly signal that Australia should feel shame and remorse for the actions of Cook and his contemporaries. Such a proposition would naturally, if one followed the logic, lead to tasking European Australians to feel shame for themselves, levelling accusations of racism against those who feel the statue belongs is equally quite unproductive, and will likely further promote moral hysteria. However, it cannot continue to stand, can it? For the indigenous population, the occasion of Cook's arrival, or to some invasion, marks a spiralling affair of trauma and misery wrought by European colonists alone. 1770 marks a painful cultural memory, a disruption to the uninterrupted 65,000 years of traditional custodianship of the land. So stands Cook, the bronze-encrusted purveyor of disease, warfare, and modernity. Those who stand beneath his presence are imposed with the memory of an unprecedented reckoning. Navigating the variety of perspectives to locate a resolution to the thousands of statues across Western nations is certainly not a cakewalk. As I myself stand at the feet of Cook's statue, the sentiment occurs again and again in my mind. If you build it, they will come.